Okay, you guys ready? Okay, I'll call the order of Sparks City Council meeting of January 28th, 2019 with a roll call, please.
Mayor Smith,
Here.
council members Abbott,
Here.
Lawson, Anderson,
Here.
Bybee,
Here?
Dare,
Here.
City Attorney Adams, City Manager Driscoll.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, if you all please stand for the invocation. Our speaker today is Rajan Zed, Universal Society of Hinduism.
I shall be reading from ancient Hindu scriptures, some as old as 1500 before the Common Era. I shall read in Sanskrit and translate into English. Om Bhurvubhaha Svaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yo Na Prachodayat. We meditate on the transcendental glory of the Deity Supreme, who is inside the heart of the earth, inside the life of the sky, and inside the soul of the heaven. May he stimulate and illuminate our minds. Astoma Sadgamya, Tamsoma Jyotirgamya, Vidyurmambaturgamya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality. Tasmada Sakta Statum Karyam Karma Samachara, Asakto Hacharan Karma Parmapanopi Purusha. Karvaneva hi Samsiddhi Masita Jalkadya, Lokas Veha Mevapi, Sampasham Katumrahasi. Strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world by devotion to selfless. One attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. Om Saha Navavatu, Saha Navanatu, Saha Vidhem Karma Bahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvisa Bahai. May we be protected together, may we be nourished together, may we work together with great vigor. May our study be enlightening, may no obstacle arise between us. Samniva Akuti, Samna Hidyaniva, Samnamastu Vomano, Yathava Susahasti. United your resolve, united your hearts, may your spirits be at one, that you may long together dwell in unity and concord. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Rajan. If you remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Mr. Driscoll, would you lead us?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Speed through that comma though. There's no comma there.
Okay, I'm going to open up public comment. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak at this time? I do not have any cards. If you'd like to speak, we can get you up to speak first and then fill out the card afterwards. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. Approval of the agenda, 5.1. Anybody want to pull anything, Mr. Lawson?
I want to pull item 7.2 till I can get the coach here.
Okay, that's for the Reed Raider Mavericks.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other changes? Okay, looking for a motion.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second, Mr. Abbott.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Where's my button?
You don't get a vote.
I don't get to vote. Passes unanimously. Yes. Okay, minutes. Consideration possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks City Council meeting for January the 14th, 2019. Any corrections? Mr. Dare.
No, Mr. Mayor, we just move to approve the minutes as they are.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second, Ms. Bybee.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, announcements and presentations, recognition items, and items of special interest. The first one is presentation of Washoe County Vulnerable Population and Homelessness. Amber, come on down. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I don't know where it's at.
It's right there
Not
in
sure
the
how
middle.
to work.
Down there, down.
Under the moon. Oh, look at that.
Oh, I didn't even see the moon. I'm looking all over the moon.
He must have taken that.
I think he did.
Sorry, I don't know how to make this bigger, but
We got help.
I
Help
need
is
to
on
phone
its
a
way.
friend already.
Donald?
Phone a friend. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Just this slideshow?
Yeah. And then do I just
From the
press
beginning?
page?
You can just,
Started.
from the beginning? Is that what you're-
Yeah. Thanks for having me this afternoon. I wanted to give a little bit of an update. There's been a lot of activity that's happened throughout our region in the last year around the vulnerable and homeless populations that we're all working collaboratively on. And so we thought it would be a good idea to do a presentation here as well, so we can make sure we answer any questions and give you guys an update on what is happening. And throughout the presentation, please stop me if I've missed anything. I've given this presentation 63 times, so sometimes I miss some things. So just let me know if I'm going too
You were here
fast.
2 weeks ago, don't you remember?
Right. That wouldn't surprise me. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the current structure at the Record Street location. And one thing I just want to clarify is that Washoe County is not the lead agency over the Record Street shelter. We are a contributor of funds, a regional agreement that we all share in the financial responsibilities, but we're not directly the oversight body over the shelter. But this just gives you a good understanding of the capacity that is at the shelter. There's 158 men, 50 women, 150 in the overflow, which is actually on Washington Street. It's not on the Record Street campus. And then there's 102 families and maternity individuals that are in the Record Street shelter. So minus the overflow, you have a very diverse population of people under one roof, so to speak, in one block. This is the Community Assistance Center. The vendor is the Volunteers of America, so they operate and maintain the daily activities of the shelter. Their contract is currently being extended to December 30th of this year, and then we are going out, well, I should say in September, we will go out to RFP because it's time to do so, and there's some changes that we want to make to that contract. This is one of the things that I like to start with, to just talk about one of the reasons why we went down this path of trying to relocate populations. And anything that I talk about today, I don't want it to be seen as a criticism that things are terrible at the Record Street shelter. It's more of information to provide us some additional clarity on some of the opportunities that we have. So this is particularly important to HSA. HSA is responsible for child welfare, adults, and seniors within Washoe County. And one of those arms is child abuse and neglect, of course, but also child care licensing and early child care learning environments. And so this is one of the areas that we look at because just by design, you can see the gates to the inside and outside where the children are playing. And a lot of times you have a lot of adults lingering or sitting outside those fences. And so it's really a distraction for little guys when they're trying to play and maybe observers to some things that we wouldn't like them to hear or be a part of. And so this is just one of the areas that we looked at on what can we do differently for this population. We started looking at the data of the homeless individuals at the Record Street shelter. And one of the things that we were hesitant was there was lots of talk about building a new shelter over on the NAMS campus. There's a 6-acre parcel of land that's available. There was some talk about building an additional shelter there and relocating all of the men to that area. There was lots of talk about moving populations in lots of different areas of the region. And one of the things that we wanted to be mindful of is what does the data tell us about what these populations have? What are some of the challenges so we can make sure that we build the right thing? So some of the reasons that we found, there are, of course, many reasons that lead to homelessness, but these were really the top 6 around why people were ending up in the shelter. So, of course, the cost of housing is becoming an issue in our region, health, mental health, addiction, lack of income, being evicted, transient, those types of things. And so this gave us a good snapshot of what are some of the areas or challenges that we would need to address. The next is our Crossroads program. For those of you, I won't get into this very much, but Crossroads is a Washoe County Catholic Charities Alta Vista partnership. And what Crossroads does is it's a tiered housing first model. So it's not a substance abuse treatment facility. It's not a mental health facility. It provides housing and shelter and food, and then wraps services around individuals depending on what they are experiencing. The recidivism is quite low in the Crossroads program, and there is an opportunity for us to expand some of our services and beds, and the shelter residents would be a perfect candidate for those types of Crossroads beds if we had any available. And so we looked at the difficulty we were having with the homeless population and our inability to expand the Crossroads program and how we could better marry the two of them. Crossroads was built on designing a program for the serial inebriate, ones that were the highest utilizers of the emergency rooms, jails, that sort of thing. So very similar circumstances that we're finding with the shelter residents. When we got done with the data profile and the analysis, there were several things that we consider as a region to be opportunities. The first is that our current vendor does not bill for Medicaid services.
You know, Amber, can I stop you right there? Why don't they? Because I've heard this before.
There's a number of different reasons why a provider doesn't bill Medicaid. One is the cost to employ somebody that is Medicaid certified. The salary has to go up for those individuals. It's a recruitment barrier, but it's also not a requirement in their contract. So it's always been a general fund stream, not asking the vendor to offset Medicaid revenue.
Wouldn't it be wise to put it in their contract? I mean, I don't know how much money we're talking about there, but, you know, we pay the bill.
Absolutely.
And
That's
they're-
one of the things that sorry to interrupt, that's one of the things that we are working on is we have to start having Medicaid help us
Yeah,
offset some of the revenue.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Mike?
yes, sir.
The management team, which includes several folks of your senior team, will be getting together actually beginning of next week to try to finalize the conversation on what needs to be in the next RFP for services for the center. And so there are several things like Medicaid billing that while they're not part of the current service and wasn't asked for, will be certainly minimum requirements for the next go-around. So you'll see the service level change, which will then get responses back in an RFP and determine who the vendor is, and then they will have to satisfy the various things. But Medicaid is one of the main things that we're talking about.
Thank you.
A couple of other things, just like we saw the reasons that end up to homelessness in a couple of slides before. There's not a lot of substance abuse and mental health services at the shelter, minimal health and dental access. There's low incentive to make positive decisions and work towards independence. SNAP benefits, that's food security, so in the form of food stamps. They may be a recipient of a SNAP benefit while they're in the shelter, but they don't have to use their SNAP benefits while they're in the shelter. And so they have food security because they're in the shelter, so they're getting food, and then they're a recipient of the SNAP benefits, and they're not having to utilize those either. So there's a couple of different things that happen with that. If they're not utilizing their SNAP benefits, they can trade them, they can do lots of other things. I'm not suggesting that they all do that, but it takes away a SNAP recipient for somebody else who may need it because the SNAP benefits don't turn off when they're in the shelter, and they can be in there for up to 90 days if you're a male and 6 months if you're a female or a family member. So that's a really long time to continue to receive your SNAP benefits. Of course,
One sec. So do we have any idea of how those SNAP benefits are being used? Have we done a survey or asked or then, because I have the feeling, I'm sure that a lot of us do, that that's traded for other things that are not necessarily conducive to getting out of the homeless shelter.
right, we can ask the state to pull those numbers to see out of these recipients. That's a great question. I've never been asked that, so that's a new question for me.
I think it's something that we should look at just because we're trying to get them transitioned to be independent. And
Right.
that, to me, if you're not able to have an additional source of income to continue some bad habits, I think would help.
Absolutely. We can definitely do that. I think what we may find is that they're being used. We just won't be able to determine who used it.
I have
But
that
we-
feeling also.
But we should do that analysis. That's a great recommendation. We should look at that.
Thank you.
The other one, of course, is that we believe that children should have a little bit more quieter space that's not as chaotic, and a place where they can kind of be and just be kids and not have them in the mix between two buildings to do that. There is some concern about ongoing drug use on the campus. And then commingling populations brings a whole nother level of experience and dynamics. And we know that one of the issues that we have in Reno, not so much as it is in Vegas, but sex trafficking is on the rise. And so you have commingling populations. You have children trying to get on the bus stop in the morning, different people with different crime records. And so you have kind of a mix of a lot of excitement that's happening within this campus. What we also looked at is our mobile outreach safety team, which some of you might be familiar with. That's who go out with police officers and try and mitigate a mental health situation. That is the number one response for our MOST team, is the CAC. And so we have to look at that. If they are expending several hours a day at the CAC rather than responding to other areas in the community, we have to build something instead so MOST team isn't always responding. And then more concerning is it's also REMSA's number one spot that they go to. So if you are infusing resources into the CAC campus that REMSA is having to respond to, I'm not saying it's not a call they can't get to outside in the community, but it's one less team that's able to respond to other emergencies.
Could we put a no work zone or something right in front of the center? Where you say kids trying to catch a bus, right? And so you put up some on both sides, say you guys can't come in this area.
Yeah, I think they do an okay job. It's just the logistics of the campus is difficult. But we are talking to them about how can we give them a space that's a little bit more kid-friendly.
We know where they're at, and they take
Right.
up one side of the street, and we don't need them
Yes.
moving over the other side of the street.
Right. These are just some of the demographics that I think are important to look at the totality of the populations. There was over 2,600 homeless individuals that were served at the shelter, and then you can see the breakout. A couple of interesting points when HSA started looking at the data is that 42% of the 275 children are less than 5 years old. And this is important to us because we know how important early childhood is for our children. Read by 3, specific milestones and curriculum that they need to achieve so that they can be successful academically. And we want to change that for them and put them in an environment. This is an unduplicated count. So 275 kids is a lot to frequent the shelter. You can see 12% are seniors. And then,
Amber?
I had a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. On the data there, on the right, you've got the 69% of men. What are the differences, the top category and then the bottom the one in the middle? That changes, and I wasn't clear on why those numbers are different.
so the men and women, that's adults, and then the 275 is broken out between male and female children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it correlates to the
Yes.
box that they're next to, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is the increase that we saw, so all of this data was compiled just using the year 2017 because we needed to have a full year. There was an increase of 60% at the shelter, so we started seeing a significant rise, which also correlates with winter months and things like that, but we also had an increase in the homeless population. This is a slide that we like to use to just talk about, we call this an opportunity slide. Again, what you will see as the conditions that the residents are reporting upon entrance into the shelter and then upon exit, you will see that there is not a lot of change between those two areas. And I always want to caution this data that when you are in a situation where you're only there for 90 days, you're not going to solve your addiction problems and you're not going to solve your mental health problem. But the goal really is that you have established some type of thorough assessment and some type of case management so you have a warm handoff when you leave the shelter. And so those are the things that we want to work on. The physical disability and chronic health conditions are almost equally as high as mental health problems. And so the alcohol and drug abuse, those reports are very low. We know they're much higher, but these are residents giving reports, so they're probably more comfortable giving reports of physical ailments rather than addiction or mental health. But this really just solidified what we had looked at before, and some of the theories around 67% of them had 2 or more conditions, and mental health was a huge problem for the residents at the shelter. So this tells us with whatever we're going to build and change in the contract, these areas have to be addressed or we're not going to change the dial for these residents. This is more of some demographics about them. This is what I was talking about when I mentioned that the SNAP recipients, so 55% of them are receiving SNAP benefits. So you have 50% of the population that at least has some food security or ability to purchase food with the help of the government. And that's through the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services at the state level. And then more interesting was 58% of them have some form of income. This was important for us to take a look at because now we are learning that there's income of some sort and food security for a good chunk of the residents. And so that gives us a foundation for them to build on. If we can address some of the other things, perhaps they wouldn't end up in the shelter as much. And then we also learned that 74% of them were Medicaid eligible. We know that number is probably more around 95% because the only way they wouldn't be eligible is if they were not here legally, and they probably just haven't registered or become eligible for services. So what we were talking about earlier with the Medicaid billing, your population is ripe for Medicaid allowable services and utilization. So wherever we can bill Medicaid to bring in some of those dollars, the population suggests that we would have a really good shot at bringing in some additional revenue. This keeps changing, so I'll just skip over that real quick. When we started looking, so you'll see right above north of River House, that's the 6-acre parcel that I spoke about a little while ago. Some of you may have gone to the Veterans Hospital opening. It opened in December. That's actually right in that area too. And so when we started exploring having the men's shelter built on that campus in that area, there was a lot of concern about the new veterans home and what that would bring to the area. The other pause that we had is this campus has been a lot of different things for a number of providers, but there still is a significant presence of children on this campus. There's an adolescent treatment center that's for mentally ill adults. There is the Center for Aspiring Youth, which is a children's cabinet residential program. We have the TADS program over on the right by 21st Street. That's our temporary assistance for displaced seniors. That's a housing program for seniors that HSA monitors and facilitates that program. And then, of course, River House on the left is our Women's Crossroads program. So when there was discussion about moving 200 to 300 men to this campus with the already established populations there, it caused a lot of discussion about whether that was the right move. So we started touring some of the buildings to figure out how we could facilitate and use the campus different. These buildings have been closed since I think 2001, a majority of them. And the reason they were closed is because of the Aging and Disability Services, had a lot of the disability programs in there, and there were some federal laws that were enacted that said that you couldn't house those populations at those buildings, and so they are completely underutilized. And so rather than trying to build something, we wanted to look at whether some of the buildings were something that we could utilize. So we set out to work regionally on what the populations look like, and we were able to do a couple of things. 8C in the middle there will house homeless families. There's a total of 27 families at the Record Street facility. That building specifically will house 14 families. And then over to the right, 604 is homeless postpartum. That will house 12 families and postpartum. So postpartum is women that are about to give birth or have just given birth, homeless moms with brand new babies. There are 6 beds available for them at the Record Street campus, so we're hoping to be able to expand those numbers or increase them so we can house more mothers there. We know that a lot of mothers don't go to that Record Street campus for a variety of reasons, so hopefully this will give them something that's more familiar and comforting to them. And then one of the more exciting buildings is the Homeless Shelter Learning Center. This will be a standalone daycare for children that's very similar to your relatives or children that you took to daycare, a standalone, different groups based on age, curriculum. There is a perfect enclosure outside that you cannot see in, and so children will be able to run freely and not have any distractions from what might be going on outside. Then there's a couple of other buildings, they call things 8C, 8 Central, and 8S. So just to make it really confusing. So 8 Central and 8S is where homeless women will be housed. There are 50 women at the Record Street location. It'll more than fit 50 women. And then another area or trend that we're seeing in the region is our young adults 18 to 24 that are experiencing homelessness that don't frequent the shelter for a variety of reasons. So they are couch surfing, sleeping on the streets, very vulnerable age, and not really a place for them to go. We're excited that the Eddy House will be opening 50 beds for that population, but there's many more homeless individuals than that. So as many beds as we can get, the better. That would house about 50 young adults as well, which I think would give us a capacity of 10% of what the real need is. So we're still far from where we need to be. But there is some theory that we will have some synergy with the women and the families at this campus. Women can either directly go into the River House in a Crossroads program, or there are 3 cottages that are squared out right there. Grace Church provided us $250,000 to rehab those buildings. 2 of them are open. They open tomorrow, actually, and that will house 24 women. And the 3rd cottage will actually, what we're finding is there are more women with children struggling with substance abuse issues that haven't lost their children yet than there are women that are childless adults. But kids take up more beds. And so we're trying to determine a way that we can put more families together so the children don't have to end up in foster care while their parents get the needed help that they need. And then finally, while we were at it, there is another building called 2A. It's the Enliven building there. And in Washoe County, we're the 3rd fastest growing county in the nation for seniors. And one of the gaps or infrastructure issues that we're having is our Daybreak program for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. We can only serve about 22 every day for the square footage of the building, and we don't have any ability to expand. So the Senior Daybreak program allows us to relocate our Daybreak program to there and hopefully serve about 75. So that's almost tripling it triples the amount of census that is a desperately needed service for seniors in our area so that they can stay at home with their caregivers and their caregivers have a place for them to go during the day. So where we are now is this lease went in front of the Board of Examiners in November. It went in front of the Board of County Commissioners in December, I think. Maybe don't quote me because I'm not really sure. and then was presented to the CHAB, which you have 2 members here that are on that. And next week, we'll be giving an update on where we're at with the progress of the campus. I will tell you that it is the hope that we do not go through another winter at the Record Street location. It's a tent that has to be put up from about November to March and brings a lot more people, about 40 more people, 40 to 60 to that campus in an already very stressed situation. So we're hoping that we will have all of the improvements made so that we can open by the end of October, November 1, and avoid another winter. So I know that's a lot of information. I'm sure I missed stuff, but let me know if I can answer any questions.
Okay, questions or comments? Mr. Dare?
Yes, thank you for being here very much. And part of this is thank you for coming for our Sparks residents. We get to be in meetings and hear a lot of this stuff all the time. And anybody out there that's wondering what's going on, they hear things on the news and everything. This is really, really good information. And I think it's important that they know that we're very involved. Part of our involvement is helping to come alongside the county. And I'd like to say, I think that what's happening on Record Street is obviously very important, but that's only a real piece of it. I can say my opinion, I think we've said this really loud, but is that the more that you guys step into that role, I think is where we want you, where we think you should be. And I think that's where the real changes will happen. And we're here to walk with you, encourage you, walk, however that works. I do agree with the kids. I just have to say, if we keep kids in a place that this is the example they get, then we're almost training our next homeless group of people. And so it's really important that we find a way to create an atmosphere where they can become stronger and learn something different. And so, but thank you for all of it. And I tell you, the Medicaid is so important. And I just want to say we've been talking about that a lot. So that's going to shift and change. And I really look forward to the tour. Sorry, I have to switch up my days and stuff. But anyway, it's pretty fantastic. And if anybody on our board wants a tour of that, hopefully everybody's getting a chance for that. So my biggest question is timing, but I think you answered that. But thank you for all you're doing and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, so looking into, say, next year, everything's open, will we still have families over at Record Street and children, or just men, or?
Amber Howell, for the record, no, we will not. What this does, and I may not have been very clear, so what we're doing is we are removing or relocating all families, women, postpartum, and the daycare at the Record Street. They will relocate and fill up the buildings at the NAMS campus. What that allows Record Street to do is a couple of things. One is to get rid of the overflow site that's currently open all the time. It's not an overflow. It's a everyday full situation. And then the tent. That frees up, us relocating these populations, frees up 212 beds at the Record Street location and allows for that population of individuals, males specifically, to have targeted programming. What we would then like to do is start screening those individuals as a pipeline to the Crossroads program. And we're hoping to do that on the NAMS campus, census and population, as well as the Record Street.
Mr. Adams?
A couple of different questions. Mental health is obviously a big concern over here. Do you have an idea the difference between the environmental causes of mental health? Is it systemic? Is it caused by chronic drug and alcohol abuse?
Amber Howell, for the record, that's really a moving target for us. It's sort of a chicken or the egg phenomena. We don't know if people are suffering from a significant amount of pain, so they self-medicate. We don't know if their mental health symptoms are so unbearable that they self-medicate, or if their addiction led to them not taking care of themselves and then they got some type of medical condition. I think it's probably all three, depending on the...
Your mental health problems are primarily addiction-based?
No, actually, they're separate. The mental health reports are specific to mental health disorders, to not include substance abuse.
Okay.
And can you tell us what you do to protect your vulnerable population, keep them safe? In other words, do you conduct criminal background checks? Do you know how many felons are in your population at any given time, or registered sex offenders, or people with outstanding warrants?
Amber Howell for the record. I don't have that information. I don't know if we do. I just know that a lot of them have criminal backgrounds. That's probably in the database system, but I'm not sure. I mean, we could probably find that for you.
See, the problem that I have is that, as the mayor and Councilman Dare has pointed out, the city contributes quite a bit to this. And knowing lawyers the way I do, if there's really no opportunity or no effort really to check on these people, are you an ex-felon? Are you a registered sex offender? Do you have warrants? And then they attack one of your vulnerable populations, elderly, children, pregnant women. I could see that coming back on the city as a supporter for that kind of negligence, knowing full well that nothing is being done, but yet we allowed it to continue.
I will say that those things are not a disqualifier to get into the shelter.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Amber, thank you. I feel like for the first time, we're all going in the same direction. I think this is pretty cool. And I think Chet's questions are valid and they're reasonable, but there's a myriad of questions we haven't even asked that we are just scratching the surface on this whole thing. But the main thing was to get our community, Reno and Sparks and Washoe County, all moving in the same direction. And I feel like we've done that in the last 9 months in this new Community Health Homeless Advisory Board, the CHAB board. To me, it's great. Christopher and I got to spend some time down there at the overflow in the tent last night, and you get to see some anecdotal evidence of what we're up against. And there's some people that are there for situational problems. There's some people that are there with chronic diseases, and there's some that are just, they have mental problems. And one lady was having a wonderful conversation with herself, and I was pretty impressed. But it's not an easy problem. And what you're showing on here is, I think our solution for the future is to how do we get them off the street, moving in the right direction, and keep hands on until we got them out of the situation and made them productive. I think that's the part we're still figuring out at this point.
Absolutely.
And I think that Medicare, Medicaid billing is a huge, huge part for us. I think the SNAP benefits too, that we need to find that. So we have a little more control. If you're gonna get a free service, you should offer yourself up for a little bit more control to get out of that situation. So it's great progress. 9 months, I'm very encouraged. Next year at this time, I hope to have big, big gains. But thank you for everything you do. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Amber, for your presentation. And I would agree with everything that's been said. I mean, it's a multifaceted problem, and there's not one solution to it as we as a community deal with it. And I think all of us are looking at other communities across the country, small towns and then bigger cities. And we don't want to be San Francisco or San Diego or places where it is just unmanageable. It's become such a problem. So as we've seen that 60% increase, it's kind of a real eye-opener for our community to what we can do. I know when we were talking about this last year, a lot of the experts that met with us talked about case management really being the solution to, and when we pulled people off the river a couple years ago and we had case managers working with them, I believe about 70 homeless were taken out of homelessness because of that. With this program, and you show the time they're in the shelter and then they leave, is case management a part of the follow-up that can keep people, get them into housing, get them jobs, make sure they're on medication, to ensure that we're empowering that population to be able to make it on their own, not the recidivism, so that they come back to us. So how big is that case management, or is it is that, again, obviously a cost, and the Medicaid and Medicare dollars would help with that. But right now, are you able to do case management, and how do you keep, the recidivism from happening with the population we have now that are in and out of the shelter?
Amber Howell, for the record, so that's my favorite thing, case management. If you don't have case management for these individuals, we are wasting a lot of time and money. And one of the things that we know for sure is that we were doing a pilot program, but we didn't know it. And we have intensive wraparound case management that actually happens in the CAC shelter now with HSA social workers. And what those numbers are showing is that the recidivism is less. They're way more successful at achieving temporary or permanent, a more soft handoff to living independently than the rest of the population. There's a couple of different reasons for that. Maybe families have a little bit different motivator because they have their children with them, but they're still struggling with addiction issues and employment and all of those things. And what that model has shown us is that when you have intensive case management, the outcomes far outweigh the costs of case management. So what we are in the process of doing right now is a very aggressive budget submittal about increasing HSA staff at the NAMS campus to go along side by side with the VOA staff or whoever the vendor should be. There is a difference between a house manager and a peer support type person that interacts with the residents, but there's also a level of professionalism and experience with that type of resident that you would only get with certain job specifications. So we're hoping to bolster up that quite a bit because we're really trying to get people so that we don't add additional beds, we end the homeless cycle for them. And it would be my hope that first we have a robust intake when they come into the shelter. We should know what their case plan is going to look like, what referrals are going to be vetted out, and then a case manager follows them throughout that process. And then there has to be some level of outpatient case management after they leave to make sure that once they leave the campus, we don't say, good luck to you, that they still have some ongoing support, because it's very difficult to leave a very structured environment, and that's when they need the supports the most. So the case management is absolutely key, and if we relocate all of these individuals and we don't do case management, it will be for naught.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Amber, thanks for this report. I got a lot out of it. I really do appreciate you coming down and doing this. We all know what we've done in the past is not working, but the direction that we're heading in, I think, is going to work. Moving the women into their own facility, separating the groups and the children, and I think it's a sad situation. I'm one of those advocates of not throwing any more money at it. I don't think money is the answer, but thank you for all your efforts, and Jane and anybody else that's here that works on this. And you don't only do it Monday through Friday, you do it 7 days a week.
Thank you.
So I appreciate everything you do.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll see you again.
Okay. Oh, I'm just going to leave it.
Okay, 7.3, announcement of board and commission vacancies, Airport Noise Authority panel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Steve Driscoll for the record. The following committee appointments is available. Airport Noise Advisory Panel, 2 members. They do need to be residents of the city. Persons interested in serving on this committee should complete a community service application available from the city clerk's office. You may also apply online at the city's website, www.cityofsparks.us. Click on Government on the webpage, then under Boards and Commissions, click Volunteering for a Sparks Board or Commission, then fill out the online application and submit. Applications will be accepted until the close of business on Friday, March 1st, 2019, or until there's enough applicants have applied to fill the vacancies. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, sir. Okay, we'll move on to consent items. Anybody want to pull one If not, looking for a motion? Mr. Lawson,
Move to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.4.
we have a motion, look for a second. Mr. Abbott?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, 9.1. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the appointments to the Sparks Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, the brand-new Sparks Citizens Advisory Committee, for a term that is a coterminous with their appointed elected official, subject to reappointment every 2 years from the following pool of applicants listed in alphabetical order: Wayne Alexander, Farrell Arnold, Bessie Kahn, David Hall, Senior, Margie Hermanson, Raynell Holtz, Avery Huckabee, Lamerne Kozlowski, Marcy Coopersmith. I know her from somewhere. She's that voice always right here. Rosemary Pageant, Andrea Pelto, Martin Roberto, John Sebastian, Kyle Waxman. Mr. Driscoll. Oh, I've got you down for
No
presenting
problem,
it.
yeah. I guess the question is, I think everyone on the panel knows what we're doing and why we're doing it. There's been interviews and discussion and reviews of applications, and at this point, in the staff report, there are the suggestions by the various members for the appointees and the alternates that are designated by the resolution. So at this point, unless you wanted some more detail
Nope.
on what we may be thinking about, it's time for you to be involved in the appointments process and the council to ratify those appointments on your behalf and their behalf, and then get started.
Okay. Questions or comments? Mr. Lawson?
I received a message that Raynell Holt's husband is taken ill and cannot serve.
Okay.
So I just want to move John Sebastian up, and then I'm going to rely on Marcy to find a alternate. My great advocate over there. But, yeah. so
And
we can
John's
move
gonna,
forward.
will be an alternate when we vote today? And then we're gonna move him up, or,
We're going to move him up to the member
okay,
because of Raynell not being able to serve.
okay. So, looking for a motion in that order? Mr. Lawson, you wanna give,
To approve John Sebastian as the appointment from Ward 2.
and the rest of them? Give me
The
the,
rest of the
and the
ward.
rest of them, from every ward.
Worried about Ward 2.
I know. Okay, we have a motion, looking for a second. Mr. Abbott.
I will gladly second that.
And Mr. Abbott is our liaison
Uh-huh.
to this committee. The youngest guy on the council. He doesn't know any old music, so anything you give him has got to be 1999 and above.
CDs only.
So if you have a senior dance, don't invite that guy. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any
all
further
new to
discussion?
him, though. Everything's new.
Seeing none, all, please vote. Passes unanimously.
Can we introduce the members if
Yeah,
they're here?
would you stand up if you're in here and introduce yourself?
Or can we just go down can each of us say where's our?
Well, let's start with Mary. We can just go around and tell us what ward you were,
I'm Marcy Coopersmith, and I'm Ward 5.
You know it, girl, right there.
yes, ma'am.
I'm Kyle Waxman, and I'm in Ward 5, but I received a call from the mayor.
That's right. You're my appointment. Chris doesn't know what he's doing all the time. He said, I try to fill in for him. Margie,
Margie Hermanson, Ward 4.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Laverne Kozlowski, Ward 1.
Ward 1.
Ward 1, yay. Right behind you there, Margie.
Farrell Arnold.
You don't know what ward? I think I picked you. I think I did. Let's just say I did. Yes, ma'am.
Andrea Pelto, and I was picked by you.
Okay, thank you.
John Sebastian?
Oh, that's, you must have been giving him the snake eye.
Motion.
In the audience.
That's right.
Yes,
Flash-
sir.
Flash that ward
You
sign.
got a raise. We'll
Yeah.
pay you double.
Yeah.
That's-
Thanks, David.
He's my alternate. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, folks. We really
Thank you.
appreciate this. This has been a long and arduous journey. We used to have one, and it disbanded, so now we're back together again and look for big things. Thank you. Ms. Bybee?
I would just like to say, I'm excited that we have, that all of you have volunteered to serve on this, in this capacity to be the voice for seniors, especially as one of the seniors sitting here on the council.
I don't think you need a voice.
And I would like to thank especially Marcy for your help with this, but our youngest councilman, Councilman Abbott, for being just the firebrand behind this that kept pushing and making sure that this happened. So I would like to give kudos to you for making this a reality, and I look forward to this committee and the input they can give us from the seniors represented here in the city of Sparks. Thank you.
Mr. Abbott?
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for those kind words. I do understand I am the youngest, but I grew up with a father that was born in 1929. I grew up with seniors my whole life. This is just normal people to me. That's all it is. So thank you all for supporting this. It's been a great process. I'm looking forward to seeing all the good stuff we can get done, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
And maybe we can get a quarterly report. Okay? Yay.
Marcy's shy about being in public, though.
Yeah, she's shy. Her and her husband both are pretty shy. Thank you, folks. Okay, we'll move on to 9.2, consideration and possible approval of an interlocal agreement, AC 5546, with Washoe County to allow the City of Sparks Environmental Control Section to provide pre-treatment inspection service in Sun Valley and unincorporated Spanish Springs. Mr. Drinkwater.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you. Michael Drinkwater, Treatment Plant Manager, appearing before you today as the Interim Environmental Control Supervisor. You have before you today for your consideration an interlocal agreement to clean up some language between the Sparks EC team and Washoe County. We've been performing inspections in these areas since 1980, so this is not a new practice, but in the 2015 audit of our pretreatment program by US EPA, they asked to clean up the interlocal agreement to make it clear that our officers have jurisdiction to do what they're doing in the unincorporated county. That's the genesis of the agreement before you. It does, in fact, make it clear that they have the authority to enter those areas to perform inspections and to enforce the wastewater discharge ordinance. This agreement has already been approved by the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners on January 8th, and it's here before you for your approval.
Okay.
Happy to answer questions.
Questions or comments? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, I move to approve the interlocal agreement with Washoe County to allow City of Sparks Environmental Control Section to provide pre-treatment inspection services in Sun Valley and unincorporated Spanish Springs.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second. Mr. Dare.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Sometime today. There you go. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Mike. Okay, 9.3, review and possible acceptance of the advice and recommendations provided in resolution number 4 from Sparks Tourism Facility and Revitalization Steering Committee regarding the expenditure of $1,280,000 in lodging tax proceeds for the Nugget Event Center. Armando, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith and council members. I am Armando Ornelas, your Assistant Community Services Director. This agenda item 9.3 is related to agenda item 9.4. And I can present the two items separately, which make them a little more digestible, or I can do one longer presentation and then you can take action separately, whatever your preference.
Any concerns, Chet?
No, you can do it either way.
Okay, let's do 9.3 and 9.4.
Okay, so if you'll bear with me, I'm going to need to provide you a little background. As the mayor and the council are aware, the city receives the proceeds of a 2.5% tax on the gross receipts of rental transient lodging in Sparks. These proceeds may be used for projects or capital improvements in Victorian Square, where that would benefit Victorian Square and promote tourism in Washoe County. Prior to expending these proceeds, the City Council needs advice and recommendations from the Sparks Tourism Facility and Revitalization Steering Committee, which is a mouthful. It was created per the 2003 legislation that actually provided for this additional tax on lodging in Sparks. Councilwoman Bybee and Councilman Lawson currently sit on the committee, and then there are two appointments by the RSCBA, and then a seat is reserved for a person appointed by the Nevada Resort Association. The committee's recommendations to the council must be based on a master plan. The committee most recently amended the master plan in 2016 to, among other changes, allow for incentives for private Victorian Square retail or entertainment venues and facilities, provided two things occur. One is that it's intended to fill a financial gap in the cost of the project, and secondly, that the public investment leverages private investment at a minimum, a one-to-one basis. That 2016 plan did not specify specific projects. Instead, or specific retail or entertainment projects. Specifically, it requires that any proposed expenditures of lodging tax proceeds for such a project requires a committee recommendation in the form of a resolution to the Sparks City Council. The first use of the lodging tax proceeds for an entertainment facility occurred in 2017 when the committee and the council approved $1.5 million for the $7.5 million renovation and reopening of the Victorian Square Cinema facility by Saifi Enterprises and Galaxy Theater. So this proposal very closely mirrors that one in structure. On December 12th of last year, the committee met to consider a request from Marnell Gaming for lodging tax proceeds to fill an anticipated financial gap in the cost of demolishing the former Bourbon Square Casino, which has been vacant for several years, located at 1040 Victorian Avenue, and replacing it with the proposed Nugget Event Center. So up on the screen now is the proposed site plan. The Victorian Avenue is on your south, C Street is on the north, 10th Street on the east, and Victorian Plaza Circle is on the west. That's the location, and this is the proposed site layout when it's seated to stage for maximum occupancy for a concert. The stage is on the west side and it faces east.
Armando, I didn't notice until I read it in the paper, they flipped that, didn't they?
They did.
Okay, I like it better like this anyway.
And I'll get into that in a little bit. That requires, and it's in the agreement, an exclusive license from the city to Marnell to use this corner here, and I'll show it to you in a second in a different configuration, which shows it a little bit better. But yes, Mayor Smith, that's been flipped.
Thank you.
So in this configuration, it would seat approximately 8,600 people for concerts, and the estimated cost of the project, exclusive of acquiring the site, is over $6.4 million. And Marnell Gaming has requested $1.28 million, $1,280,000 of lodging tax proceeds for this purpose. So on December 12th, the committee approved resolution number 4, which is again what 9.3 item, agenda item 9.3 is, asking that or recommending that the council accept this recommendation, and then the second item 9.4 provides for the agreement to actually provide the funds to the Nugget. In reaching its decision to adopt resolution number 4, the committee reviewed and considered several things. One is the proposed description. So they had this site plan. This is the second configuration where the seats are removed from the middle, and they can be you can do other things in the middle, and then this general admission option allows it to be opened up for example, if they wanted to add a Reed Village or move the Reed Village here, or do something along those lines where you needed more space for a special event. In the view of the committee, the proposed event center would provide a venue for popular musical acts, which would advance the city's goal of creating a highly energized mixed-use district in Victorian Square to draw both residents and visitors. And again, as I noted, this project would also provide additional space for downtown events that are currently operating more or less at capacity in terms of the space that's available downtown with all the redevelopment that's occurred. The committee reviewed the proposed terms for the provision of financial assistance to the project, so there was a term sheet attached there to that proposal that was provided to the committee. And basically, the Marnell gaming funds for costs other than land would be at least $5,120,000, while the city would contribute the $1,280,000 from lodging taxes. And again, this represents a private to public ratio of 5 to 1. The committee was also provided a cash flow analysis prepared by city staff, demonstrating that the city can provide that $1.28 million while also covering all of our previous commitments for the proposed streetscape improvements along Victorian Avenue, for public art, which is in that plan, and the $500,000 that is still owed to Saifi Enterprises for renovation of the theater. As you may recall, that agreement provided $1 million after completion of the project, and then $100,000 each year for 5 years, as long as the project stayed open. So the purpose of the cash flow analysis was to demonstrate, A, we have the money now, and B, it doesn't use all of the money, so there's still the ability to fund additional projects over the next several years.
Is this money reimbursable? Is there milestones like we did with the theater?
Yes, it's structured very similarly, in a nutshell, basically the city would pay $1,280,000 in total, but $853,760 would be paid upon the opening of the project to the general public for a live performance or special event, and then provided the event center continues to be used for concerts and other events, there'd be 3 payments of $142,080 on the anniversary date of opening of the. So
Okay.
again, the thought is, at least it guards to some extent of the risk that the facility were not to continue. So in conclusion, that first agenda item, when you get to it, asks you to review and accept resolution number 4, which is the recommendations from the committee. In terms of item 9.4, if the council accepts the resolution, the advice from the committee, then you can consider the incentive agreement. And in terms of the proposed agreement, the key terms are as follows. 1, the event center must be completed and a live performance or special event held there prior to September 15th of this year. That's obviously an aggressive schedule, but as Marnell Gaming has represented to all of us, they are looking to have it operable this June, so hence that particular date. This is on a reimbursement basis. I went through the payment structure, and because it's on a reimbursement basis, Marnell Gaming must provide the city reasonable documentation of its expenditure, so they'll have to provide basically a spreadsheet with documenting their costs and with invoices to support it, to demonstrate that in fact they've spent these funds. And then here's what I was alluding to earlier. This is a provision of the incentive agreement where the city is agreeing to provide Marnell Gaming this at the southeast corner of the property, this area, which totals approximately 3,859 square feet. This is public right-of-way. It's part of the Victorian Avenue right-of-way. We have a very wide sidewalk here. It's at least 30 feet deep all the way across. This area was offered, if you will, by the city in order to accommodate the flipping of the arena to orient towards the east. Otherwise, with this notch here, you didn't have the rectangle, and you didn't have the ability to reorient it fully to the east. So this is provided for in this agreement specifically. And then finally, in terms of the key terms of the incentive agreement, the city agrees to consider specific requests from Marnell for cosmetic improvements to the public areas around this. We would presumably handle this through our streetscape improvements project. And so when and if there's something that they would like to see happen there, we would consider it as part of that process. The city is reserving full discretion to consider and determine whether to make any expenditures for that purpose. The construction of this project does require a conditional use permit for a major recreational facility. And on January 3rd, the Planning Commission did approve a CUP for the project, so that has been addressed. And so with that, staff is recommending that the City Council approve the incentive agreement. Again, that would be item 9.4 on your agenda, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, any questions or comments? Charlene Bybee, Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Armando. I want to say I think the project is really a game changer for Victorian Square and our Victorian Square district and what we want to see happen as far as a vibrant attraction and definitely the tourism increase that we'll see with a venue like this. I do appreciate that our major developer, along with Marnell Gaming, worked together to come to a compromise, and why the stage was flipped from the other direction was consideration of the residents who were down there already, and buildings, the bridges specifically, have been built, and not anticipating that you'd have live concerts where the flipping the stage makes a big difference for the residents who have already purchased and are renting downtown, and it gives the Deco building, which it will face, the opportunity to be reinforced soundproofing for those residents. So I think it's a great example of working together, public-private partnerships with us and Marnell Gaming and our developers to come to an agreement that works for everyone, that I think is exciting. I think on the redevelopment agency side of it, it's exciting to see what's being created down there. I think it's beyond what I think most of us really anticipated 4 years ago when I came on the council, and to look where we are now, this is huge. And I think for the region, it's even more important because we will be able to bring major, bigger entertainment acts and to Sparks specifically, but to our region. We'll increase room nights in the whole region. That ability to do that, I think, is important, as well as I'm especially excited that the city will have the opportunity to use the facility. This is summer concert series is what Marnell Gaming has told us they're anticipating. So they're looking at concerts through the early summer through early fall timeframes. So the rest of the year, whether it's 39 North Pole, Pumpkin Palooza, as well as our other events, Rib Cook-Off, Star Spangled Sparks, all of the things we can use, but there could be a lot of other possibilities that arena could be used by the city and by community groups for other functions during the year. And I think that's another bonus for us, for our residents, and for the city. So I will be ready to make a motion, but I'll let other comments first, and then.
Mr. Lawson.
I think this is a great deal. It's going to be the largest outdoor venue in northern Nevada. And from what I understand already, there's 3 acts booked. First one being Toby Keith, then Hank Jr., and Lady Antebellum in August. So 3 big ones to start off. I think it's going to be a wonderful deal for our downtown. The access that's planned for Uber and for all the naysayers that say there's no parking in downtown Sparks, there's 900 spots in downtown Sparks to park in. So plus the 2,200 at the Nugget. There's plenty of parking. Try to go to downtown Reno. There's not so much parking down there. So we're very excited about this, and the Nugget's going to be a great partner. And who would have ever thought that we we're going to have an outdoor venue in downtown Sparks? But I think it's a wonderful, wonderful idea. And with the partnership with the RSCVA and the SMG, they're partners with Ticketmaster. We expect to see bigger acts that are traveling the I-80 corridor from San Francisco to Denver and all points east. Now we'll have an ability to make a stop here, because that extra about 1,500 seats makes a difference for them in the profitability of the show. So it put us on the map, and it's a good thing for us.
Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, definitely a great project, but I have a couple questions on the numbers. What was the first payment number? It was like 800,000-ish, right? Or
The first payment, Councilman Abbott, Armando Ornelas here. The first payment is $853,760.
Cool.
So that represents essentially 2/3 of the amount, as was the case with the Sayufi payment structure, where we had a 2/3 payment up front, and then the balance was over several years afterwards.
yeah, and then to maintain the 142,000 on the anniversary, how many concerts or events do they need to hold a year?
They need to hold a minimum of 6 concerts or events each year.
Cool, thank you.
Hey, any other questions or comments? For me, Armando, I'll say that when we started remodeling downtown, which was a long time ago, and then we hit the recession, but when you remodel, renovate, whatever you want to call it, you want to create excitement down there with all the living buildings we have down there, people can move in their apartments and take part of the Nugget and all the restaurants that we're putting in. This just doubles the excitement downtown. This is wonderful. I know a lot of people here go up to Harvey's to watch their outdoor concert. Now they can stay right here, and I think it'll be a draw, a real big draw, so. Okay, any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion, Ms. Bybee?
Ready to make a motion? I move to accept the advice and recommendations provided in resolution number 4. From
We
the
want to do 3 first, don't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's doing that. Sounds like it's three.
Oh,
I'm on
s-
3, I
I don't have it in
think.
front of me.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm on 3, aren't I?
sorry.
I move to accept the advice and recommendation provided in resolution number 4 from the Sparks Tourism Facility and Revitalization Steering Committee regarding the expenditure of $1,280,000 in lodging tax proceeds for the Nugget Event Center.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second. Mr. Anderson?
Like to second the motion?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay. 9.4, questions or comments? Mr. Lawson?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
Move to approve the incentive agreement between the City of Sparks and Marnell Gaming LLC to provide up to $1.28 million in lodging tax proceeds for construction of the proposed Nugget Event Center.
okay, we have a motion looking for a second. Mr. Abbott?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And I love this project. This is good stuff.
Good job to you, too.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Armando.
It's a lot of hard work you went through. Thank you.
You and your staff.
Short
yeah.
amount of time.
Grand slam.
Okay, 9.5 is the first reading. Lisa?
This is the first reading for Bill number 2754, a general ordinance rezoning real property approximately 1.9 acres in size and located at 2101 Sullivan Lane from SF 15, single-family residential, 15,000 square feet, to C2, general commercial, and other matters properly relating thereto.
Okay, this is bill number 2754, general ordinance rezoning real property approximately 1.9 acres in size and located at 2101 Sullivan Lane from single-family to general commercial and other matters formally relating thereto. This will be heard on the first council meeting in February, which is February 11th. Okay. Moving on to public hearing, 11.1. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, Karen, because I don't wanna give you a presentation. Karen Melby, welcome.
Karen's gonna read it all.
Yeah, she's gonna go through step by step.
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith and Council. I'm Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. Before you today is this item is a comprehensive plan amendment for 8.742 acres site located north of Coyote Ranch South, which is down in here, east of Pioneer Meadows, which is here, plan development, and south of the Lazy Five Regional Park, which is located here. This is Pyramid and Sparks Boulevard, which comes into the middle of the project. The comprehensive plan amendment requested land uses do not modify the number of or types of land use categories within the Coyote Ranch North. Rather, the proposed changes involve the relocation or allocation of acreages among various land use designations. This is the existing land use map. This is amending our comprehensive plan map, not their handbook. There is a slight difference in residential. This would be the proposed land use. You can see it slightly changes in residential by about 4 acres. For mixed use, the acreage nearly triples from 20.5 acres to 69 acres. There is a decrease in acreage of commercial, representing about 18.6%, and employment centers a reduction of 36.1%. Community facilities increased because of villages 17 and 18, which has been purchased by Washoe County for the middle school and elementary school sites. That's this location right here. The middle school is under construction right now. there is no change in the open space acreages. On October 18th, 2004, the Kylie Ranch North Tentative Development Handbook was approved. The City Council approved an amendment to the Kylie Ranch Tentative Handbook in the year 2016. When the city adopted the comprehensive plan in the year 2016, we approved land uses in the plan development. We took the approved land uses that are in the plan development handbook and translated them to equivalents of our land uses. And that's what's represented on the existing land use map right now, is a translation of their land uses to our land uses in the comprehensive plan. The now request is to change our land uses or shuffle them around and do some reallocation. If the comprehensive plan amendment is approved or certified today, then the tentative plan development handbook will have to be amended, followed by amending some of the other final handbooks that have been recorded. The comprehensive amendment, will change the job housing balance from 1.6 jobs to housing units generated with an estimated of 7,071 jobs. The 2016 estimated housing balance was 1.8 jobs to housing units, or an estimated 8,138 jobs. With this comprehensive plan amendment, the estimated job housing balance is the same as was projected in the year 2004 when this project was originally approved. The trip generation letter that was submitted with the project was prepared for this amendment concludes that the estimated traffic generation represents a reduction in traffic between 2016 and 2018 land uses of approximately 22,587 average daily trips. The AM peak is projected to produce 2,000 fewer, and PM is estimated to result in 3,381 trips fewer. Addressing the four findings, the first finding, CP1, which is the conformance with the regional plan, can be made because Kylie Ranch North Plan Development was approved since the year 2004 and has been included in the city's utilities and facilities plan and is located in the impact service area number 1, which as a development occurs they will have to pay impact fees. This was approved by the Regional Planning Commission in December. Finding CP2, which is the implementation of the comprehensive plan, goals and policies relevant to this proposal are goals MG1, MG2, and H2, with policies MG1, MG5, and CF1. Overall, the proposed land use changes results in a total of 279 acres of commercial, employment, and mixed use, which represents an approximate 27-acre reduction, or less than 9%. Kylie Ranch North was approved in 2004 and has been included in the utilities and facilities planning for this region since that time. Therefore, staff reviews the proposed land use as consistent with the goals of providing a non-residential land use space and factors a mix of land uses. Policy MG5 requires fiscal implications to be analyzed of the proposed land use changes. With the application was submitted a fiscal impact analysis, which concluded that the estimated revenue to the general fund is $287.4 million, with an estimated expenditure of $211.8 million, producing a revenue surplus to the general fund of $75.6 million over a 30-year period, which in the fiscal impact analysis, they used a 30-year, though our minimum standard in our comprehensive plan is 20 years. As for the road fund, $25.6 million is estimated to be generated with expenditures of $57.2 million, resulting in a deficiency of $31.6 million over the 30-year period. Combining the general and the road funds, this results in a positive fiscal impact of approximately $44 million. The proposed land uses changes for Kylie Ranch North will reduce the acreage allocated for commercial and employment center by about 26%. The build-out assumptions used in the Kylie Ranch fiscal impact analysis related to projected building square footage with build-out was relatively static. So they reduced the amount of area for the acreage of the business park, but they increased or remained at the same amount of square footage for the build-out of the buildings. This assumption suggests that they're intending to have a more intense development than currently planned for the Kylie Ranch North FA or floor area ratios. A floor area ratio is the amount of building square footage compared to the property size. Also, in the FIA, or the fiscal impact analysis, the floor area ratios used are historically higher than characteristics of our typical development in Sparks. Accordingly, city staff anticipates asking that such assumptions will be included in the future handbook amendments, which may take the form of a minimum FAR or floor area ratio requirements for non-residential uses consistent with achieving the build-out assumption in the fiscal impact analysis. Addressing findings CP3, compatible with the surrounding land uses. To the north is Lazy 5 Regional Park. To the east is Pyramid Meadows Planned Development and Wetlands. Also to the south is the Kylie Ranch South Planned Development, and to the west is the Quarry Project. The proposed land uses designations are fundamentally being the same. It's a real shuffling around of some of the land uses and reallocations of some of the land uses. Also, the street network is not being changed. So it is not anticipated there will be impacts to the surrounding area. Addressing findings CP4, which is public notice. The public notice was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal on September 20th, 2018. Their neighborhood meeting was held on September 19th, 2018, and there are 12 people in that meeting in attendance. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Lawson?
Karen, did you say what the floor area ratio, what is that ratio? Did you say what it was? I didn't hear it.
It depends on the
future
type of
commercial?
use. Huh?
It's for future commercial, I'm assuming that's what you were saying, right?
Well, it's commercial and business park, and they have different ratios.
Okay, so can you, which one, do we know which is which?
The business park was, I believe, 1.4, and the commercial was 0.25 or 3.3%. So that makes 30% of the property size. So that means the 0.3 would be 30% of the property be developed, which
Business
typically
park,
I
we're
did
gonna
it,
build 2 stories is what you're saying.
or more, yes.
Okay.
I did do an analysis. I picked projects within the city of Sparks and looked at what the FAR was for different projects within the area. And our typical FAR for industrial is 0.43. The average for commercial is 0.22. And then also I looked at mini storage, and that came out an average of 0.375 FAR. And their proposed FARs are a little
Do
bit
we
higher
have
than that.
FAR that's 1.4 anywhere else in Sparks?
1.4?
Yeah, isn't that what you said? Business Park was 1.4?
No. 0.43.
Okay,
1.4 would be very high.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a big floor area ratio.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dare.
I'm ready to make a motion if nobody else has anything else to talk about.
Go ahead.
Let me interrupt. You
let's
need to
open
open the
Oh,
public
I'm sorry,
hearing.
yeah, you're right. And I've been looking at that too. So this is a public hearing. Anybody in the audience wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Mr. Dare?
It's actually more a comment, and on this one was interesting, being new to the council, learning floor area ratios and the fiscal analysis and all that, but I want to publicly say thank you to the staff for helping me work through this one and getting a better understanding of it. And likewise, I'm with you, Christopher, so.
Okay, now, Mr. Dare.
Okay, you ready? I move based on finding CP1 through CP4 as set forth in the staff report to certify a comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use designations on a site approximately 874.21 acres in size located in Sparks, Nevada, north of the southern division of Kylie Ranch, east of Pioneer Meadows, planned development, south of Lazy Five Regional Park and along Pyramid Highway, Sparks, Nevada, from 334.21 acres with various residential designations, 20.47 acres of mixed use, 156.91 acres of commercial, 128.92 acres of employment center, 9.42 acres of community facilities, and 107.4 acres of open space, to 338.25 acres with various residential designations, 69.04 acres of mixed use, 127.75 acres of commercial, 82.4 acres of employment center, 42.52 acres of community facilities, and 107.4 acres of open space. And I chose to not memorize at this time, but I decided to read it.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second. Mr. Anderson.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to 11.2. Ian, I'm gonna go ahead and read this. Public hearing, discussion of possible certification of a comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use designation from community facilities to low-density residential on a site approximately 10.6 acres in size located north Wingfield Springs Road and west of Fenway, Sparks, Nevada, Pioneer Meadow Plan Development. Ian.
Thank you, Councilman Lawson. Members of the City Council, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. This is a lot shorter description than Karen, so hopefully it'll be easier, at least in that way. This is a comprehensive plan amendment request in Pioneer Meadows. You can see here on the vicinity map, I think most of us know, but for those who don't, Pioneer Meadows is located north of Vista Boulevard along Wingfield Hills Drive. This site being specifically located on the north edge of the site, kind of centrally located in the planned development. The site is 10.6 acres in size. The request is to change the land use designation from CF, or community facilities, to LDR, which is low density residential. You can see here on this map, this is the existing land use designations in the Pioneer Meadows plan development. And the request is to change that one parcel of 10.6 acres to the same land use that is surrounding it on both the east and the south. The Pioneer Meadows Plan Development Handbook was approved in 2000, has been amended 3 times. The site was designated as a school site. The Washington County School District had 5 years in which to acquire that site if they were interested in it. That time has elapsed. The Pioneer Meadows Plan Development Handbook specifically designated that if the school district did not want this site, that it would be converted to housing at no more than 4 dwelling units per acre. The comp plan amendment was the first step in the process for this site. Handbook amendment will be forthcoming to address the development map within the handbook, as well as some other issues in the handbook. The proposed amendment also removes a park site that will be relocated in connection with another park site in Pioneer Meadows. The size of these parks is no longer in conformance with the Parks Department's goals and objectives. The new park site is still being discussed and will be nailed down specifically through the handbook amendment, which is forthcoming. Here is a map that kind of shows where those 2 park sites were, kind of one to the north that was a part of the school site that made sense, and then one down here. Those sites are now too small, and so they're reevaluating that, and it'll be specifically updated with the handbook. Changing the land use to low-density residential is compatible with the adjacent land uses and will not exceed the capacity that the roads and other infrastructure were designed to accommodate. The Pioneer Meadows Plan Development Handbook contemplated a maximum of 2,756 dwelling units. Under currently built and permitted and what is anticipated, we're only looking at 2,264 units. So an additional 42 units on this site will not overload the design criteria for the infrastructure, both of roads and otherwise. There are 4 findings of fact associated with the comprehensive plan amendment. Finding CP1 requires conformance with the regional plan. The proposed changes supports goal 1.1 of the regional plan, as the area is already within Sparks, City of Sparks TMSA and the city limits. It also supports goal 3.5, which generally relates to concurrency. The site is within the Pioneer Meadows plan development, and the city services can be provided. This site is also in IFSA 1, which is establishes impact fees to pay for city services as they are extended into this area. Finding CP2 requires that the proposed change would implement goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The changes would support goal H2 by promoting a strong housing market. Policies MG5 requires that a fiscal impact analysis be submitted and reviewed. The fiscal impact analysis indicated that this amendment would generate a surplus of $791,000 to the general fund and a deficit of $774,000 to the road fund, with a cumulative surplus to the city of $17,000 over the next 20 years. Policy CF1 is also supported by this proposed change, as the infrastructure to support this change is already planned in the Pioneer Meadows Plan Development Handbook. Finding CP3 requires that the changes in land use be compatible with the surrounding land uses. This site is bordered on the east and on the south by the same land use designation they're requesting. To the north, there is a little bit of open space, and then again, the same designation. And then to the west, there is EC, which is Employment Center. That designation is compatible with single-family residential, as residential and employment center tend to support and support each other. We can also see that to the south, the existing land use, they're already bordering, so we can assume that there is compatibility there as well. Finally, finding CP4 requires proper notice of this request. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on September 20th, and the Planning Commission and City Council function as the public hearings. The applicant also held a required neighborhood meeting on September 19th. No members of the public attended that meeting. On October 4th, the Sparks Planning Commission reviewed and approved this comprehensive plan amendment. On December 12th, 2018, the Regional Planning Commission heard this item and determined that the request is in conformance with the regional plan. Staff believes the findings can be made and is recommending that City Council certify this comprehensive plan amendment. That's the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing.
Okay, any questions or comments right now? Okay, we'll open up the public. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. Mr. Dare.
I will then make a motion if you're ready.
Yep, go ahead.
I move to certify a comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use designation from community facilities to low-density residential on a site approximately 10.6 acres in size, located north of Wingfield Springs Road and west of Fenway, Sparks, Nevada, in the Pioneer Meadows Plan Development based on findings CP1 through CP4 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report.
Okay, we have motion. Looking for a second, Ms. Bybee.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Thanks, Dan. Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move to public comment. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Bill? Public comment? Yeah. Come on down.
Come on, Bill, we don't have to wake you up every time.
Yeah.
I only have a couple of questions, and one is with the homeless. It would have been nice to see a Prater chart on how many people really don't want to work. And should we as citizens give them money when we're driving by? And that's another one. And the other thing, should we give them food? What should we do about that?
You always ask us questions, Bill. You're
I
killing
know.
me.
I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
There is some laws concerning that, though, but
There are, good, okay, all right. The other thing about the stadium, what about noise for the homes that are close by? And the other thing is, restrooms, you're gonna have toilets out there, and are they gonna take them away or what? Well, with 600 people, you know.
500 people there, what do you
8,500 people?
A lot of trees.
Hey, I went to the summer solstice in Mexico. They had one bathroom for 11,000 people there.
Oh, good.
Didn't work very well.
No, I'm sure it didn't, all right.
And it was an outhouse.
That's just a question, I think.
I know, we'll be better than that.
Good. And what was the other one I wanted to ask you guys about? Oh, gosh, I'm gonna remember when I walk away. My handwriting is terrible. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to me. I'll talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we're going to bring it back to the council. Any comments from the council or staff? Mr. Dare.
Yes, I just want to invite everybody. We have really good news. On March 29th, we have a groundbreaking for the Nevada Veterans Memorial, and we want to invite March 29th. It's going to be at 10 a.m., and everyone's invited to come out and celebrate it. We're doing our first phase, getting that rolling. And there's a lot of different things going on we'll talk more about, but it's very exciting for our state and for our city, and especially right there at the marina. Whoever came up with that great idea, good job.
Who?
It's that wise lady right there.
Oh, Ms. Velasquez. Okay, any other comments? Without objection, we are adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of Monday, January 28th, with a roll call.
Chairperson Bybee,
Here?
Mr. Abbott,
Here.
Mr. Lawson, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Smith,
Here?
Vice Chair, Mr. Dare, City Attorney Adams,
Here.
Chief Administrative Officer Driscoll.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving down to item 3, do we have any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Item 4.1, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve?
I have a motion from Agency Member Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Agency Member Smith. Please vote. You get to vote now. Motion passes unanimously.
I know.
And the mayor's happy he gets to vote. Item 5.1, minutes. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of December 10th, 2018. Do I have any corrections, additions, or a motion to approve?
To approve?
Second.
I have a motion by Agency Member Lawson, a second by Agency Member Abbott. Please vote. Carries unanimously. Item 6.1, business items. Consideration and possible acceptance of the report of the claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of November 22nd, 2018 through January 9th, 2019. I have a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Motion by Agency Member Dare. Do I have a second? I have a second from Agency Member Lawson. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Item 7.1, comments from the public. Do I have any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close comments from the public. 7.2, comments from the agency and Chief Administrative Officer. Seeing none, we are adjourned. And I will never be as fast as